AITA for making a scene when my parents ruined my promotion dinner for my sister's engagement? My name is Jessica Davis and I was born into what seemed like a pretty typical middle-class family. In a quiet suburb outside of a major Midwestern city, my parents, Mark and Karen, were absolutely obsessed with child development techniques and early stimulation methods. There were piles of parenting books all over the house, highlighted and full of colored sticky notes. My mom was always talking about some new theory she had read. Everything in my childhood had to be educational, useful, and designed to stimulate the brain. It was never just playing. One night, while my mom was trying to teach me simple addition with colored flashcards, I was barely 3 years old when I heard my dad tell her tiredly, "Karen, do not you think we are overdoing it a bit?" "No, Mark, these years are crucial for development," she replied, showing him another card full of numbers and drawings. "The books say we have to start very early if we want her to have an advantage." Looking back now, it makes me laugh to think about how ordinary my development was. I sat up, walked, and talked exactly at the normal times. Nothing spectacular, nothing precocious, no genius baby. Instead of accepting that every child has their own pace, my parents started seeing me as their first failed experiment. Everything changed when my younger sister, Madison, was born. I was 3 years old and overnight the house turned into something resembling an intensive boot camp for gifted babies. My mom had taken special stimulation courses, incredibly expensive workshops, and attended conferences on high-performance children. She was determined not to repeat the mistakes she claimed to have made with me. The difference in the way we were raised was brutal. Where I had simple stuffed animals and dolls, Madison had sensory boards, logic cubes, memory cards, and games to stimulate neural connections. Where I had picture books, she had cognitive development materials. Every little achievement of hers became a celebration. Her first words came early. She walked before the other babies in the neighborhood. She put together puzzles for older kids without much difficulty. My parents told everyone as if they had struck gold. My paternal grandparents, George and Helen, lived a few blocks away in an old but cozy little house. Their house became my refuge. There were no early stimulation flashcards or speeches about intellectual potential there. Only the smell of freshly brewed coffee and my grandma's homemade apple pie. I remember a Sunday afternoon. I must have been about 5 years old. I was sitting on my grandmother Helen's lap while she read a story to Madison and me in the living room. The fan hummed softly and the television was off, something rare at my parents' house. "The 2 granddaughters I have are perfect just the way they are," she said, giving each of us a cookie. And that is that. That phrase always seemed to irritate my mom. When my mom heard her, she would press her lips together and look away. Sometimes she mumbled something about recognizing exceptional talent or not encouraging mediocrity. My grandmother told my mother one day during a family barbecue, with a tone that did not leave much room for argument, "Kids need affection, not pressure. They are not science experiments." "Mom, you do not understand modern parenting," my mom replied, lifting her chin. My dad jumped into the conversation immediately. "Madison has real talent, Mom. We have to take advantage of it, otherwise it will be wasted." I was in my chair pushing peas from one side of the plate to the other. At that age, I already perfectly understood that for my parents, I had only been the dress rehearsal, the rough draft, and Madison the masterpiece. Elementary school for me was pretty normal. I was not the best in the class, but neither was I the worst. I had friends, did my homework, and that was it generally. I enjoyed just being a regular kid. My report cards were full of As and BS, with comments like meets expectations. To me, they seemed perfectly acceptable grades. To my parents, they did not. When I handed them my report card, they barely looked at it. Sometimes they just said, "Uh-huh," and left it on the kitchen counter. No one stuck it on the refrigerator with a cute magnet. The day Madison started school, things were very different. While I had gone to the local public elementary school, walking with my backpack on my shoulder, my sister received completely different treatment. "We have enrolled Madison in the Crestwood Academy for Advanced Studies," my mom announced one night at dinner with a proud smile. "They almost never accept children this young," but they were impressed with her test results. I remember I almost choked on my milk. The Crestwood Academy was that private school across town with a huge campus, sprawling sports fields, and a semi-Olympic pool. Everyone knew that tuition there cost more than most people's cars in our neighborhood. It was a status symbol. The spending did not stop there. Every time Madison complained about homework or threw a tantrum over some activity, my parents' solution was always the same. Money, gifts, prizes. "I do not want to do math today," she complained, throwing her notebook on the table. "It is really hard." "I have an idea, sweetie," my mom replied with a sweet voice. "If you finish your homework, we will go to the mall, and I will buy you that dollhouse you liked." It did not take her long to learn the game. Soon every little achievement came with a price tag. "If I get an A on this test, will you buy me the new tablet? I can do extra credit, but only if you buy me those designer shoes." Meanwhile, I did my homework at the kitchen table alone with no prizes, no applause. Once, in my first year of middle school, I got the highest grade in my class on a science project. I built a model of the solar system out of cardboard, paint, and styrofoam balls. I spent weeks working on it in the afternoons. When I showed it to my mom, she barely looked at the work. "How nice, honey," she murmured, taking a quick glance. "Oh, I forgot to tell you. Madison was accepted into the advanced math program for highly gifted children." It was as if my achievement had vanished into thin air. The straw that broke the camel's back came when I was 13 years old. Back then, I occupied the larger of the 2 bedrooms for the kids. I had decorated it with posters of my favorite bands, photos with my friends, and some cheap string lights I bought at a craft store. It was nothing luxurious, but it was my space, my refuge. One afternoon I was reading in the living room when Madison walked in with a determined step. "I want Jessica's room," she said, planting herself in front of our parents with her hands on her hips. "Mine is too small for all my things and I need more space to study." I looked up from the book, sure that my parents were going to put a stop to it. That is ridiculous, I thought. Instead, they looked at each other. "Well, it makes sense," my dad said, as if it were the most logical thing in the world. "Madison does have a lot more study material, more equipment." "What?" I yelled. "This is my room. I have had it since I was a little girl." My protests were useless. The next day while I was at school, they moved all my things to the small room. When I got back, I found Madison already settled in my old bedroom. Her expensive desk occupied the space where my bed used to be. Her books and materials filled the shelves. "This is so unfair." I cried with my eyes full of tears. "Life is not fair, Jessica," my mom said without turning to look at me. "Your sister needs the space more than you do. Do not be selfish." I slammed the door to my new bedroom, the small one. I threw myself on the bed that barely fit next to an old dresser. That night, staring at a ceiling I did not recognize, I understood something important. In that house, I was always going to be the second choice. Years passed and the final stretch of high school arrived. I was close to graduating and had spent months researching universities, filling out applications and dreaming about my future. My grades were good, I had decent extracurricular activities, and a couple of teachers who supported me. I was not aiming for an Ivy League school, but I had my sights set on several solid state universities with good business programs. The family dinner that changed everything started like any other Sunday. My grandparents had come over for my mom's famous pot roast. We were all sitting around the dining room table. Madison was showing off her latest achievement while my parents smiled proudly. "And you, Jessica?" asked my grandmother Helen, looking at me with genuine interest. "Tell us, honey, what are your plans for college? Where do you want to apply?" I sat up straight in my chair, excited to finally be able to talk about my plans. "Well, I have been looking at the state university," I started to say. "It has a really good business program and—" "Oh yes, about that," my mom interrupted, placing her fork on her plate with a sharp sound. "Your dad and I have been talking, and we are not going to be able to help you with college expenses. Tuition, books, housing, nothing." I felt my blood run cold. "What?" I asked. "We have to save all our resources for Madison's education," my mom continued as if explaining something obvious. She was accepted into a special program, and if everything goes well, she could get into one of the most exclusive private universities on the East Coast. That is not going to be cheap at all. Tuition, room and board, materials, travel. "You cannot be serious," my grandfather George said, dropping his silverware on his plate. "And Jessica's future?" Does that not count? My mom sighed as if she were tired of repeating the same thing. Look, Dad, we have to be realistic, she said without looking at them. Madison is an exceptional girl. She has enormous potential. Jessica is. Well, she is a normal girl. College is very expensive for someone who does not have extraordinary abilities. She can look for a job after high school, or if she saves up, go to a community college. How dare you? My grandmother's voice trembled with rage. How can you speak like that about your own daughter, Karen? Please, my dad intervened, his face turning red. Let us not pretend. Jessica has never shown anything out of the ordinary. Investing in expensive studies for her would be throwing money away. We are just being practical. I could not take it anymore. I felt like the walls were closing in on me. My throat closed up. I pushed my chair back and ran out of the dining room with tears already streaming down my face. Behind me, I could hear the argument continuing, the supposed logic of my parents clashing with the indignation of my grandparents. About 15 minutes later, I heard a soft knock on my bedroom door. Jessica, can I come in, sweetheart? It was my grandmother's voice. I did not answer, but she came in anyway. She sat on the edge of my bed and started rubbing circles on my back, just like when I was a little girl and was afraid of the dark. Your grandfather and I have already made a decision, she said quietly. We are going to pay for your college. All of it. I turned around, wiping my tears with the sleeve of my sweater. But that is a lot of money, I stammered. Nonsense, she smiled, brushing a tear-soaked strand of hair from my face. You deserve an education just as much as anyone else, and that is what we have saved for our whole lives. More so, in fact, you have worked hard without anyone cheering you on. That has value, and we are going to back it up. That night, for the first time in a long time, I felt something settle inside me. I realized that I did not need my parents' approval to move forward. I had people who did believe in me, and most importantly, I was starting to believe in myself. College life fit me like a glove. Away from the constant comparisons and the criticism disguised as realism, I blossomed in the business administration program. I loved the finance, accounting, and marketing classes. My professors praised my way of thinking, my ability to analyze data, and my capacity to see patterns where others only saw numbers. I discovered that I had a natural talent for understanding market trends and investment strategies. Every weekend I called my grandparents. I told them about my progress, my exams, my projects. They celebrated every little achievement as if I had won a national championship. My parents, on the other hand, well, since I left for college, I did not speak to them. They did not try to contact me either, and to be honest, that made things much easier. The only news I had of them in Madison reached me through my grandparents. One of those calls changed the tone of the story. You are not going to believe what is happening with Madison, my grandmother told me one afternoon, her voice filled with concern. Do you remember that she was accepted into that very exclusive private university on the East Coast? Of course I remembered. My parents talked of nothing else. Well, it seems that as soon as she got there, away from your parents and their watchful eyes, she stopped caring about school, my grandmother continued. I listened as she painted the portrait of the prodigy child's downfall. Madison discovered the parties, the clubs, the boyfriends, and total freedom. She stopped going to classes. She arrived late or not at all, and when she did show up, she was often sleep-deprived. Your mom called me crying yesterday, my grandmother added. The dean's office sent them a warning letter. They say she barely attends classes, that she is behind in everything, and that she has conduct reports. Your parents are desperate. And what are they doing? I asked with a strange mix of curiosity and resignation. They have tried everything, intervened my grandfather, who was next to the phone, threatening to cut off her allowance, promising her a new car if she brings her grades up. They even flew out to the East Coast to talk to her. But Madison just laughs and tells them to leave her alone. The irony did not escape me. After years of giving her everything she asked for, of buying her the whole world in exchange for every grade and every project, my parents had raised someone who did not know how to handle even a little bit of responsibility. A month later, my grandparents called me again. Well, the inevitable has happened, my grandfather said bluntly. She was expelled. She failed almost all her subjects, and on top of that, she has a ton of disciplinary reports. I had a hard time imagining it. The golden daughter, the child prodigy, the one who was going to bring glory to the Davis name, expelled from college after barely a year. She moved back home with your parents, my grandmother added. They are in shock. They say there must have been a misunderstanding, that the university did not understand Madison's special needs as a gifted child. In the following months, thanks to the weekly calls, I learned that Madison quickly settled into a fairly comfortable routine. She slept until noon. She went out every night with different guys. She treated my parents' house like a hotel. Your dad tried to at least get her to look for a job, my grandfather told me another time. She told him that working was for talentless people, that something like that was beneath her. I could not help but feel a little bit of satisfaction and at the same time relief. I had freed myself from that environment. I was building my own path. When I graduated, I got a position as a junior investment analyst at Meridian Investments, one of the most respected financial firms downtown. The building was in a modern area full of glass offices, expensive cafes, and restaurants. My grandparents insisted that I stay and live with them while I got settled. I gladly accepted. The unexpected reunion with my parents happened on a Saturday morning in a large grocery store near my grandparents' house. I was checking tomato prices, comparing the organic ones with the regular ones, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Jessica, it really is you. I turned around and saw them. My parents were standing right there in front of me with a half-full shopping cart. They looked older than I remembered, more tired. My mom gripped the cart as if it were her lifeline. We have missed you a lot, honey, my dad said with a surprisingly soft voice. You should come over for dinner one of these days so we can catch up. A part of me wanted to say no, to remind them of every word they had said about me, every decision they made, but curiosity was stronger. All right, I heard myself answer. One of these days. The dinner was surreal. The same house, the same dining room, the same walls covered with photos of Madison at different stages, but everything felt different. My parents could not stop talking about my job at Meridian. An analyst at such an important firm, my mom repeated. We are very proud of you, truly. And Mr. Thompson, do you remember him from down the street? My dad added. He told me that they only hire the best there, that not just anyone can get in. I saw Madison's knuckles turn white around her fork. She had recently quit another job at a department store. It was the third one she had left that year. She always had an excuse that the manager was an idiot, that the salary was not up to her intellectual level, that her coworkers were too uncultured. In the following years, I worked hard at Meridian, very hard. Every promotion came with new responsibilities and challenges. I had to analyze major portfolios, present results to demanding clients, and make decisions that moved a lot of money. I faced all of it head-on, sometimes with fear but never with cowardice. My parents started inviting me to lunch on Sundays more frequently. I accepted from time to time, keeping my distance, but I no longer avoided them like before. Madison continued her pattern. Short jobs, long periods doing nothing. She always returned to the living room couch, phone in hand, with the perfect excuse. Everything changed again at a family gathering. Madison walked into my parents' house almost running, dragging a tall, well-dressed man in his early 30s by the arm. He wore an expensive watch, impeccable leather shoes, and an air of confidence that filled the room. Everyone, let me introduce you to Bradley Cooper, she announced triumphantly. My boyfriend. Bradley was polite, well-spoken, and you could tell he came from a wealthy family. At one point he mentioned that his family owned several commercial real estate properties in the city, and that he had studied in private schools his whole life. Madison spent the night shooting me looks of superiority. See, she told me during dinner, her voice dripping with venom disguised as a smile. I bet you did not expect me to find someone before you, did you, Miss Career Woman? I shrugged and kept eating. Her attempts to annoy me felt childish compared to everything I had been through. My parents, on the other hand, were mesmerized by Bradley. They laughed at all his stories, asked him questions about his family's business, and flattered his education, his way of speaking, even his way of dressing. When he left that night, promising to take Madison to an expensive restaurant the following weekend, my mom pulled me into the kitchen. Is it not wonderful? She whispered excitedly. Bradley comes from a very well-positioned family, With properties all over the city, Madison finally found her path to success. I just thought, having a rich boyfriend is not a life plan, but I did not say it. My big turning point at Meridian came when I detected a very serious error in one of our main investment portfolios. The most experienced analysts had overlooked a series of high-risk investments that could cost our clients millions if the market moved in the wrong direction. I started reviewing the data out of curiosity. I ended up obsessed. I spent 3 nearly sleepless nights analyzing charts, reading reports, and adjusting models. When I was sure, I requested an urgent meeting. "Mr. Harrison, this is serious," I told our CEO, placing my report on the boardroom table. "If we do not move these positions, we could lose a lot of money. But if we make these adjustments now, not only do we avoid the loss, we could also increase the yield." He studied the report carefully. "This is impressive, Davis," he finally said. "How did you figure this out?" "I detected inconsistencies in the risk models," I explained, pointing to the charts. "I cross-referenced the data with historical behavior and medium-term projections. The portfolio is overexposed, but if we redistribute everything this way, we could improve the result by approximately 12%. I knew they believed me when I saw the faces of the other executives. We implemented my strategy. The result exceeded expectations. 6 months later, the restructured portfolio showed a 15% increase. The clients were happy. The firm's reputation went up even more. After that, I developed a simple but effective algorithm to detect opportunities in emerging markets. It was not magic, it was just meticulous work, observation, and many hours in front of the computer. One day I was called into the boardroom again. I thought it would be another follow-up meeting. "Jessica," Mr. Harrison began, looking at me seriously but with a slight smile, "we are creating a new position, investment director, and we want you to fill it." I almost dropped my coffee mug. Investment director. That meant being in charge of all the firm's investment strategies. It was a huge promotion, skipping several usual steps. The first people I called were my grandparents. My grandmother cried tears of joy. My grandfather said he always knew I would go far, that he was just waiting for the moment to celebrate it properly. At the next family dinner with my parents, I decided to share the news. To my surprise, they seemed genuinely happy. "We have to celebrate this big time," my mom said enthusiastically. "You have to throw a party, invite the whole family." "I was thinking of booking a private room in a nice downtown restaurant," I replied. "I could invite everyone and—" No, my mom interrupted, waving her hand. "It is best if it is here at the house. Your father and I will take care of everything. It will be more personal, more special. I can call that delicious catering service on Maple Avenue." Her enthusiasm rubbed off on me. In the end, I agreed. In the following days, I transferred money to my mom's account for the party expenses. She called me often to tell me the details. "I already ordered the flowers. I already spoke with the catering company. They are going to bring appetizers, entrees, desserts, everything. Your dad is so proud. He cannot stop talking about your new position." The night of the party arrived. I put on my favorite black dress, simple and elegant, and a pearl necklace that my grandparents had given me when I graduated from college. Arriving at my parents' house, I was truly impressed by how beautiful it looked. There were fresh flower arrangements everywhere. The dining room table was set with white tablecloths, sparkling glasses, and well-placed silverware. The aroma of the catered food filled the air. Relatives had already started to arrive. My grandparents hugged me tight. My Aunt Carol gave me a kiss on the cheek. My Uncle Bob gave me a pat on the shoulder. In the living room, Madison was surrounded by cousins, wearing a designer blue dress. Bradley was by her side in an impeccable suit. When everyone had arrived, we sat around the table. I stood up with a glass of champagne in my hand, ready to say a few words. My heart was racing. It was my moment. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight," I began. "My love, let me." My mom stood up abruptly, interrupting me with an exaggerated smile. "Let me say a few words first." I sat down confused. "We wanted to gather the family today to celebrate a wonderful occasion," she announced, looking around the table with shining eyes. "Our beautiful Madison and the wonderful Bradley are engaged." They are getting married. The room erupted in gasps and applause. Madison pretended to blush and raised her hand to show off a huge sparkling ring. Bradley smiled, although he looked a bit uncomfortable with all the attention. I sat paralyzed. My glass almost fell out of my hand. That party that I had paid for with my own money, those decorations, that food, that wine, everything meant to celebrate my promotion had become the perfect stage for the announcement of my sister's engagement. I looked around. The guests' faces reflected genuine happiness for the couple. My grandparents' expressions, however, were hard to read. It was then that I understood. No one knew that this party was supposed to be for me. My parents had invited the whole family to an engagement party, not a celebration for my new position. The chair scraped loudly against the floor as I stood up. Before I could say anything, I felt my dad's hand gripping my wrist tightly under the table. His smile remained fixed so the guests would not notice anything, but his words came out through clenched teeth, cold as ice. "Do not even think about making a scene," he whispered. "If you ruin this for your sister, forget about this family. Forget about any inheritance. Sit down and smile." I yanked my hand away to break his grip. "No," I said quietly but firmly. I took a step forward. "Everyone needs to know." I blurted out louder now. The conversation stopped. The laughter died instantly. Madison's smile froze on her face. "This party," I said, my voice trembling at first but gaining strength with every word, "was supposed to be to celebrate my promotion to investment director at Meridian Investments. I paid for everything, the food, the flowers, all of it. My parents took my money and changed the celebration without telling me anything, to announce Madison's engagement." Murmurs and small gasps could be heard. "That cannot be. That is not true." My mom tried to interrupt, her face flushed. "You are exaggerating, Jessica." "Enough drama, Aunt Carol," I said calmly. "Can you take out the invitation they sent you? Read it out loud, please." My aunt froze, reached into her purse and pulled out a cream-colored card. She coughed nervously before reading. It says, "Join us to celebrate the engagement of Madison Davis and Bradley Cooper." Bradley stood up slowly. His expression changed. There were no traces of a smile left. "Is this true?" he asked my mom and dad. "You told me it was just a family dinner, and it was actually a party that belonged to Jessica." "Honey, let me explain," Madison started, reaching her hand out toward him. "No," he interrupted her. "I have seen enough." He turned to me. "I am sorry, Jessica. I had no idea," he said, looking me straight in the eyes. Then he looked at Madison. "This engagement ends here. I do not want to be part of a family that treats their own daughter this way." Silence fell like a stone. Bradley left his glass on the table and headed for the door. No one stopped him. "See what you did," screamed Madison, jumping up. "You ruined everything. You are jealous because you are alone and I actually found someone." I let out an incredulous laugh. "Jealous?" I repeated. "I am an investment director at a major firm. I do not need to steal anyone's party or marry a rich man to feel like I am worth something." "Enough," roared my dad, slamming his hand on the table. "You crossed the line, Jessica. From this moment on, you are no longer part of this family. You are disinherited. Do not ever show your face around here again." "Fine by me." "Perfect," I replied. Before he could add anything else, my grandfather's voice boomed across the room. "Actually, Mark," he said, standing up with the help of the chair while my grandmother stood up next to him, "your inheritance is not going to matter as much as you think." Everyone looked at him. "Helen and I changed our will a long time ago," he continued. "Everything we have goes to Jessica." "What?" my mom exclaimed, putting her hand to her chest. "She is the only one in this family who has shown integrity," my grandmother said firmly. "The only one who knows how to work hard without stepping on others. We are tired of seeing how you treat her." The gathering dissolved into chaos. Some relatives stood up immediately, muttering apologies and practically fleeing. Others stood paralyzed, not knowing what to say. Madison ran upstairs, crying and screaming that everything was my fault. My parents stood by the table, frozen, faces red, speechless. I grabbed my purse from the chair and walked toward the door without rushing. "Goodbye," I said without looking back. "Do not look for me." It has been 3 years since then. I have not spoken to my parents or Madison since that night. I heard my sister is still living at the house, always resentful, still obsessed with what she lost when Bradley left. My parents tried to contact me a couple of times, but I blocked their numbers. I also blocked them from my social media. My grandparents, on the other hand, continue to be my anchor. We have dinner together almost every Sunday. Sometimes at their house, sometimes at some simple place they like. They are prouder of my achievements than my parents ever were. Last week, I was named the youngest CEO in the history of Meridian Investments. When I told them, my grandmother cried tears of joy again. My grandfather brought out a bottle of wine he had been saving for years for a special occasion. To authenticity, he said, raising his glass. And to finding your own path, my girl. I raised my glass too. I smiled, and for the first time, I felt that I was exactly in the place where I was always meant to be. Comment. This story is such a powerful reminder of how important it is to be the main character in your own life. You don't need applause from others to know your own value. Setting boundaries isn't an act of aggression but an act of self-respect. Surround yourself with people who celebrate your wins, no matter how small they seem. True healing often begins when we give ourselves permission to walk away from situations that harm our peace. You have the incredible power to write your own next chapter. Sometimes the quietest choice is the most powerful one for your well-being. Remember to be as kind to yourself as you are to others. Take a moment today to acknowledge one of your own strengths. Thank you for being here and sharing this space with me. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.